It was the first day of school at an elite American private academy for Ethan Parker, a boy recently adopted from a foster home. He had already braced himself for the mocking and dismissive stares from the privileged American students. Yet, what shocked him even more was that the principal himself had signed him up as a performer for the talent show's opening act, seemingly intending to make him the object of ridicule. But everything changed the moment his voice echoed through the auditorium that evening. The entire hall fell silent, breath held. What unfolded left everyone speechless, and from that day forward, nobody looked at Ethan the same way again. Before we begin, tell us, where were you born? Share in the comments below. Let's dive into the story. Amid the noisy bustle of Roosevelt Academy, Ethan tried to blend into the background, his shoulders hunched and head bowed. A single piece of paper pinned to the bulletin board outside the teacher's office caught his eye. In bold letters it read, "Talent Show Opening Act, Vocal Performance by Ethan Parker." A cold shiver ran down his spine. He hadn't signed up for anything. "I can't wait to see him humiliate himself," sneered Blake Turner behind him, his mocking laugh bouncing down the hallway. Ethan swallowed hard and with slightly trembling hands tore the paper from the bulletin board. A wave of fear rose inside him. How had Principal Edwards discovered he could sing? Enduring daily taunts was already hard enough. How could he, a kid from foster care, stand before the entire student body? Singing was his most private refuge, a link to a part of his past he'd tried to protect. Now, it was being used to expose him. That night, on the bus ride home, Ethan stared out of the window in silence. His adoptive parents, Mark and Susan Parker, would be waiting for him at home. They had sacrificed so much for him. Perhaps it was finally time to honor that sacrifice, even if it meant exposing his vulnerable self to those who mocked him. As he rode home, the whispers he'd overheard at school replayed in his mind. "Is he Mexican or something? I can't even understand what he's saying. He's lucky he's not some foreigner." They hadn't bothered to pay attention. To them, he was just different. When Ethan arrived home, he paused at the front door, dreading how to explain everything to Mark and Susan, and wondering if he could somehow avoid this humiliation. Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. "Ethan, you're home." His mother greeted him warmly. He set his backpack down and forced a smile, but Susan saw through it instantly. She could sense the weight on her son's shoulders. "Something happened at school today, didn't it?" she asked gently. Instead of answering, Ethan handed her the crumpled paper. Susan's eyes widened as she read it, exhaling deeply. "I'll explain it tomorrow, Mom," Ethan said softly. "I just want to rest for now." Susan nodded, though they both knew a decision would have to be made soon. Run away or face it. The memory of that rainy day when he arrived in America remained vivid. 5 years earlier, when he was 10, Ethan had lived in a foster home in Chicago. It was raining that day too, when the social worker told him that a family had come to adopt him. From a young age, he loved music and singing. His memories of his biological mother were hazy, but the songs she used to sing stayed alive inside him. Lullabies she hummed while cleaning, soft tunes before bedtime. They became his comfort. When he was adopted and brought to America, Ethan spoke no English. But Mark and Susan helped him with patience and love. At first, they found his habit of singing old songs around the house unusual, but they came to see it as part of who he was. "Ethan, your voice is something special," Susan would often say. Mark wholeheartedly agreed. "One day, your talent will shine." Yet, at Roosevelt Academy, his singing remained a secret, at least until now. Ethan knew why Mark and Susan had enrolled him in such a prestigious school. They wanted him to have the best education, but even in this admired institution, he felt like an outsider. From the kitchen came the sound of a pot being stirred. Mark was making dinner. He had learned to cook Ethan's favorite dishes, like homemade chili and even Southern-style barbecue. They weren't restaurant perfect, but they were filled with love. Ethan changed into his pajamas and stood before the mirror, staring at his own reflection. "What am I going to do tomorrow?" he whispered to himself. Then, reaching into a drawer, he pulled out an old MP3 player where he'd secretly recorded his singing. Maybe tomorrow would be the day he finally shared his voice with the world. The day Ethan first arrived in America, everything felt foreign and frightening. Leaving the foster home behind, he began a new life in a small apartment in suburban Illinois, in a country where he didn't speak the language. Mark and Susan had even hired a translator for him and decorated his room with posters of American landmarks and his favorite superheroes. "Ethan, this is your new home," the translator conveyed Mark's words as the nervous boy clutched an old photograph, the only one he had of his birth mother. "It will take time. No need to rush," Susan said softly, reaching out to touch Ethan's shoulder, though she gently withdrew when he flinched. His first day at elementary school had been a nightmare. The kids couldn't pronounce his name, and his English was clumsy. "Hey you!" one kid had called out mockingly. Ethan didn't understand the words, but he recognized the sneer. That afternoon, he returned home and cried for the first time. Mark and Susan held him close and comforted him. "Ethan, you are special. Never forget who you are. You're strong," Mark whispered. As time went on, Ethan gradually learned English and adjusted to school life. Still, he remained different. The kid eating unfamiliar food at lunch, humming old melodies quietly to himself. The transfer to Roosevelt Academy came after Mark was promoted at work. "You'll get a better education here," Mark had said. "It's a chance to grow your talent." Standing at the gate of Roosevelt on his first morning dressed in his new uniform, Ethan felt more like an outsider than ever. The school, with over a century of history, was both intimidating and unwelcoming. His first class was English literature with Mr. Harris. As he entered, the entire class turned to stare. His darker complexion and slightly almond-shaped eyes made him stand out immediately. "Well, class, we have a new student joining us today," Mr. Harris announced with a warm smile. "Please introduce yourself, Ethan." With sweaty palms, Ethan stood. "Hello. My name is Ethan Parker. I came here from Chicago." Though his English was fluent, a trace of an accent remained. "What did he say? I didn't catch a word," someone shouted from the back. The class burst into laughter. Mr. Harris quickly intervened. "Blake Turner, that's enough. Show some respect." After class, Ethan walked alone down the hallway. At lunch, he sat by himself, opening the lunchbox Susan had packed with care. The scent of garlic and herbs drifted out as he unwrapped his home-cooked meal. "Ugh, what's that smell?" A blonde girl sneered, pinching her nose and walking away. Ethan's face flushed as he hurried to close the box, but it was too late. "So, Ethan sings, huh?" Principal Edwards suddenly appeared beside him. He was a tall man with sharp features and thick eyebrows. "Don't all kids like you play some instrument? Violin? Piano?" Edwards continued, pulling the corners of his eyes back in mock imitation of an Asian face. Ethan kept his gaze on his plate as the principal laughed and walked away. Barely touching his food, Ethan sat quietly for the rest of lunch. From day one, he knew life at Roosevelt would be much harder than he had imagined. That afternoon, Mr. Harris, who had taught at Roosevelt for over 15 years, watched the isolated boy. In Ethan's eyes, he saw something deeper than ordinary teenage loneliness. There was a sadness that drew his attention. After class, Mr. Harris called him aside. "I hear you're performing at the talent show, Ethan." Ethan nodded nervously. "I didn't sign up, sir. The principal, he put my name down." Mr. Harris frowned, sensing Principal Edwards' intentions. "Are you actually going to sing?" "I sing sometimes at home," Ethan admitted softly. There was something in his voice that sparked Mr. Harris's curiosity. "Come with me." He led Ethan to the empty music room after school. "Would you mind sharing something?" Ethan hesitated. This was still school. Was it really okay to sing here? But Mr. Harris's warm smile reassured him. Ethan took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began. He sang softly at first, the melody fragile, almost like a whisper from his past. As his voice grew stronger, it carried the weight of old lullabies his birth mother used to sing. Mr. Harris listened in stunned silence until the final note faded. When Ethan opened his eyes, he saw his teacher looking at him in amazement. "How has this talent stayed hidden?" Mr. Harris whispered. Ethan didn't answer. He didn't need to. His teacher had discovered something more than just singing. There was a story inside that voice. "Who taught you to sing like that?" "My birth mom," Ethan said quietly, voice trembling. "When I was little." Mr. Harris nodded slowly. "You're welcome to practice here every afternoon. No one will bother you." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really? But what about the principal?" "I'll handle him," Harris said firmly. "Now, start preparing for your performance. It's time for them to see who you really are." The day of the performance drew closer. The entire school buzzed with gossip and bets on how long the awkward foster kid would last on stage before fleeing in embarrassment. Principal Edwards quietly encouraged this toxic atmosphere. "Those scholarship kids should really learn their place," he whispered to Blake Turner during lunch. "Don't worry, sir," Blake grinned. "I've got something planned." Meanwhile, Ethan practiced in secret each afternoon in the music room with Mr. Harris's quiet support. Every time he sang, memories of his mother came flooding back. He worked hard to perfect the lullaby she used to hum to him, his private link to his lost past. "Sing your emotions, Ethan," Mr. Harris coached him. "You're telling your story." At home, Ethan shared his plans with Mark and Susan. At first they were concerned. "Is the principal trying to humiliate you?" Mark asked, growing visibly angry. "We can go straight to the school board." "No, Dad," Ethan interrupted. "I want to do this. Mr. Harris is helping me." Susan looked deeply into his eyes. "Are you sure you want to go through with this?" Ethan nodded. "It's my way of honoring my mom." Mark and Susan exchanged glances. They had always encouraged Ethan to stay connected to his roots. "How can we help?" Susan asked. The night before the performance, Susan walked into Ethan's room carrying a large box. "I've been working on something special for you," she said, handing him the gift. Inside was a carefully tailored stage outfit, a modern, elegant navy blue suit with subtle embroidered patterns that reflected Ethan's unique style and heritage. "How?" Ethan was speechless. "I found a custom tailor who works with cultural designs," Susan smiled. "Tomorrow, show them who you are." Ethan clutched the suit to his chest, his eyes filling with tears. "Thank you, Mom." Susan hugged him. "We're always with you, Ethan." Mark, standing in the doorway, added, "Tomorrow they'll finally hear my son's real voice." The auditorium glowed brightly the following evening. Wealthy parents chatted in the plush seats as Ethan stood backstage, trembling in his tailored suit. The modern design and careful details gave him a quiet confidence. Mark and Susan sat near the front, their faces tight with a mixture of pride and anxiety. Mr. Harris approached him quietly. "Ethan, sing for them and for yourself." Principal Edwards took the stage with a falsely pleasant tone. "We are honored to begin tonight's program with one of our international students, Ethan Parker." Snickers rippled through the audience as Ethan slowly stepped into the spotlight. The room was thick with silent anticipation, waiting for him to fail. Standing in front of the microphone, Ethan briefly froze. His eyes scanned the crowd until they found Mark and Susan smiling warmly. Their support gave him strength. "Good evening," Ethan began, his voice quivering slightly. "Tonight, I'll be performing a song my mother used to sing to me." Despite some muffled laughter, Ethan no longer cared. Closing his eyes, he inhaled deeply and began. The first notes were soft and hesitant, but as the song unfolded, his voice filled the vast auditorium. It carried not just melody, but years of longing, pain, and hope. The entire room changed. No longer expecting failure, the audience sat in stunned silence, captivated. At first, a few students tried to stifle giggles, but as Ethan's performance continued, they faded into nothing. Eyes locked on the stage. Even Principal Edwards shifted uncomfortably in his seat. As Ethan reached the final note, his eyes opened to see Susan wiping away tears. For several long seconds, the auditorium remained silent, as though afraid to break the magic. And then applause erupted, genuine, thunderous applause, first cautious, then building into a standing ovation. Mr. Harris beamed with pride. Ethan awkwardly bowed, his eyes scanning the crowd for his parents. Mark stood applauding, while Susan cried tears of joy. The next day, Roosevelt Academy felt like an entirely different place. As Ethan walked the hallways, heads turned, but this time with admiration and curiosity, not mockery. "There goes the singer," someone whispered. No longer was he that foster kid or that foreign student. He had earned his own title. During lunch, Jessica Sanders, one of the school's most popular students, approached his table. "Mind if I sit here?" she asked with a warm smile. Ethan nodded, stunned. "Last night was incredible," Jessica said. "Everyone's talking about your performance." Before she could continue, more students joined them. Daniel from the choir, Sophia from the music honors class. They peppered Ethan with questions about his unique style. "Where did you learn to sing like that? What kind of music was it?" Daniel asked. "It's a mix," Ethan explained. "A style that blends some older melodies with my own twist." It was a new experience for him, students not mocking his differences but trying to understand them. However, not everyone had changed. Blake Turner stared bitterly from across the room, stewing in silent rage, humiliated by the unexpected outcome. More troubling was Principal Edwards, whose anger simmered beneath a forced smile. That afternoon, as Ethan was leaving class, he accidentally overheard a heated conversation between Principal Edwards and Mr. Harris in the administrative wing. "There's no way that adopted kid will be part of the next showcase," Edwards growled. "The upcoming performance is for students in the music department," Mr. Harris countered calmly. "Ethan's talent is one of the most exceptional this school has ever seen. Excluding him sends the wrong message to the student body." "I decide what message this school sends, Mr. Harris," Edwards snapped. Later that evening, Ethan sat at home, bubbling with excitement as he recounted the success of his performance to Mark and Susan, both smiling proudly. "You finally showed them who you really are," Mark said. The next morning, Ethan received a message from Mr. Harris. "Come to my office. I have good news." When Ethan arrived, an unfamiliar woman was waiting there. "Ethan, "This is Ms. Sophia Mitchell, director of the City Arts Conservatory," Harris introduced. Sophia extended her hand with a warm smile. "I saw a video of your performance. Mr. Harris kindly sent it to me. Your voice is remarkable." Ethan glanced at Mr. Harris, who winked. "Have you ever considered auditioning for our conservatory? I believe you have the potential to develop not just in one style, but across many genres." "It's a full scholarship offer, Ethan," Mr. Harris added. Ethan sat down, overwhelmed. He had never imagined his song would open doors like this. A few days later, Principal Edwards summoned Ethan to his office. As he walked in, his palms were damp with nerves. "Well," Edwards began with a forced smile, "I hear you've been offered an audition at the City Conservatory. Quite an honor." Ethan nodded cautiously. "In fact, I believe it might be best for you to leave Roosevelt. Our school might not be equipped to fully nurture your particular talents." Beneath his polite tone, Ethan could read the truth. Edwards simply wanted him gone. "One more thing," Edwards continued. "Next week's United Voices event, where you were scheduled to perform, it's been cancelled." "Budget cuts," he added dryly. Ethan clenched his jaw but remained composed. "I understand, sir, but may I stay enrolled here until my audition results are finalized?" Edwards hesitated before replying, his expression tight. "Of course, you're still our student." As Ethan left the office, he exhaled deeply. He stood at a crossroads. Follow the opportunity at the conservatory or stay and face Principal Edwards' prejudice head-on. That evening, on his way home, he felt as though he could hear his birth mother's voice, even from far away. "Go where your heart leads you, Ethan. That's where your song begins." He realized the answer was already inside him. Meanwhile, Susan had quietly organized a plan, secretly calling it the Back Lawn Project. Inspired by Ethan's courage, many students rallied behind him. "If Edwards cancelled the event, we'll host it ourselves," Susan said to a small group gathered after school. "We have a friend here with a voice that deserves to be heard. Silencing him is wrong." Surprisingly, Blake Turner was among them. He looked down, his voice quieter than before. "I was wrong about him," Blake admitted. "I want to help." The tech club offered to run sound. The sports teams volunteered to help set up seating. Mr. Harris, though bound by school rules, discreetly arranged for equipment to be borrowed from the conservatory. "I cannot officially support unauthorized student events," Mr. Harris said with a smile. "But if some microphones and speakers happen to appear on the back lawn, that's none of my business." Encouraged by his friends, Ethan practiced every day. Jessica often stayed to watch his rehearsals. One afternoon, she brought him a tablet. "I found this video online, a performance that might inspire you," she said. Ethan smiled as he watched the video. "My mom used to love this kind of music," he whispered. Mark and Susan also got involved. Mark called a friend to handle the lighting setup for the lawn concert, while Susan reached out to local shops to create a custom outfit for Ethan's second performance. "This time, it'll be even more special," Susan said proudly. "A stage that will make both your moms proud." Word spread quickly about the unsanctioned concert. The entire town buzzed with curiosity. An unofficial show behind Roosevelt Academy, without Principal Edwards' approval, starring the boy who had stunned everyone. The day before the concert, Principal Edwards summoned Ethan once again. "I've heard rumors about this unsanctioned event," Edwards said sharply. "Participating would be a serious violation of school policy. It could also affect your admission to the conservatory." This time, Ethan didn't lower his eyes. He knew Edwards wasn't bluffing, but he no longer feared him. "With all due respect, sir," Ethan replied calmly, "singing isn't a violation. Songs are bridges. Ethan left the office, leaving Edwards momentarily speechless at his newfound confidence. As the evening sky turned a deep shade of red, hundreds of people gathered on the back lawn of Roosevelt Academy. Students, teachers, parents, even community members who had never met Ethan came to witness the concert that had become the talk of the town. A small stage had been set up in the center of the lawn. Borrowed lights from local businesses lit up the makeshift venue. Microphones, speakers, and equipment borrowed thanks to Mr. Harris stood ready. From his office window, Principal Edwards watched helplessly as the event unfolded without his control. Backstage, Ethan stood nervously in the custom suit Susan had prepared. The deep blue fabric with embroidered details shimmered under the lights, making him look as though he had stepped out of another world. "I don't know if I can do this, Mom," he whispered, his voice trembling. Susan gently straightened his collar. "Tonight isn't just about you or me," she said softly. "It's for your entire journey and for both of your mothers." Mr. Harris signaled that it was time. Ethan stepped onto the stage to warm applause, his steps slow but steady. He stood before the microphone but didn't begin immediately. Instead, he addressed the crowd with a shaky voice. "This song is one I remember from my childhood. My mother sang it to me every night." The audience listened in absolute silence, leaning in. "5 years ago, I found a new family. Mark and Susan Parker loved me exactly as I am. Tonight, I hope you'll think about your own families and express your gratitude to them." Silent tears welled in many eyes across the audience. Susan dabbed her eyes while Mr. Harris watched with a proud gaze. Ethan inhaled deeply. The song began softly, like a whispered memory, but quickly grew stronger, filling the cool night air. His voice wove together his story, blending old melodies with a modern rhythm, creating something uniquely his. The lawn sat frozen, entranced. Parents clutched their children's hands. Even the teenagers, often glued to their phones, sat motionless, some with tears streaming down their cheeks. As the performance unfolded, something unexpected happened. Dozens of people pulled out their phones, not to record, but to send messages. "I love you, Mom." "Thank you, Dad. I miss you." Some made quick calls, whispering words they hadn't said in far too long. Ethan, completely absorbed in his performance, was unaware of how deeply his courage was touching others. When the final note faded into the night, silence hung for several seconds, a sacred pause. Then, a standing ovation erupted. People hugged one another. Many wiped away tears. The video of Ethan's concert spread like wildfire across social media, under the headline, "The Foster Kid with the Voice That Moved a Town." The response was overwhelming, even attracting the attention of national media. Ethan's story soon reached far beyond Roosevelt. 1 week later, Ethan auditioned for the City Arts Conservatory. His heartfelt performance moved the judges. "We've been looking for a student with such depth and unique background," Director Mitchell said. "We're offering you a full scholarship." In the midst of his joy, Ethan faced a decision, whether to transfer to the conservatory full-time or stay at Roosevelt and continue challenging the system. But then, something truly unexpected happened. As Ethan's video continued to circulate online, it eventually reached someone watching from thousands of miles away, a woman living in San Diego. 8 years earlier, struggling with poverty and illness, she had made the heartbreaking decision to place her son into foster care. That woman was Ethan's biological mother. Upon seeing the viral video, recognizing her son's face, and hearing the song she once sang to him, she was overcome with emotion. With help from a social worker and the authorities, she began searching for Ethan. Finally, she boarded a flight to Illinois. One afternoon, while Ethan was attending class as usual, he was unexpectedly called to the office. But instead of Principal Edwards, It was Mr. Harris who greeted him. Standing beside him was a woman whose voice trembled as she spoke. "Ethan!" He froze, unable to move. Though 8 years had passed, he instantly recognized the voice that had once comforted him as a child. "Mom?" he whispered. She stepped forward, her eyes brimming with tears. "My son, you've grown so much." A surge of emotions flooded Ethan. Joy, sadness, confusion, even anger. His voice shook. "Why now? Why didn't you come for me sooner?" "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she replied in broken English. "Life was very hard. I was sick. I never stopped thinking about you. When I saw your video, when I heard you still remembered our song, I knew I had to find you." Unable to hold back any longer, Ethan broke into tears. Mr. Harris quietly stepped out, closing the door to give them privacy. Their reunion was complicated. There were many questions, many explanations. His birth mother shared the full story, how illness, poverty, and heartbreak had forced her hand years ago, how she always hoped he was safe and happy, how proud she was to see him singing, sharing the song she once taught him. "I'm here now," she said softly. "I want to be part of your life again." But Ethan instinctively stepped back, his emotions tangled. "No, Mom. I already have a family." That evening, Ethan told Mark and Susan everything. They were surprised, but their response was calm and steady. "Ethan, we'll support you no matter what you decide," Mark assured him. Susan wiped away tears and hugged him tightly. "If you want to meet her again, we'll go with you." The next day, the three of them met at the hotel where his birth mother was staying. The meeting was tense at first, but Susan extended her hand kindly. "Thank you for raising our son," his birth mother said in imperfect English. "No," Susan replied with a gentle smile. "Thank you for bringing him into this world." Standing between both women, Ethan reflected on how extraordinary his journey had been. After many long conversations, they reached an agreement. His birth mother would return to San Diego but visit several times a year. Ethan would visit her during school breaks. He would remain with Mark and Susan. But now, both families would be part of his life. "I only want his happiness," his birth mother said. "When I saw how he touched people with his voice, I felt so proud." A few weeks later, major changes began unfolding at Roosevelt Academy. Under increasing scrutiny following the public attention on Ethan's story, Principal Edwards abruptly announced his resignation for personal reasons. His replacement, Dr. Robert Chen, an Asian American educator with a strong background in diversity and inclusion, took over. At his first faculty meeting, Dr. Chen made his vision clear. "This school will be a place where every student's voice is valued, where differences aren't hidden but celebrated." Ethan chose to stay at Roosevelt, while also participating in the special music program at the City Arts Conservatory. He officially joined the school's music club and even founded a new cultural music group, introducing his classmates to different musical styles and helping others explore their own cultural roots. When summer break arrived, Ethan and his adoptive parents made a trip to visit his birth mother for the first time in San Diego. She welcomed them warmly into her small but cozy apartment, where a table full of home-cooked dishes was waiting for them. "This is real home cooking," Mark exclaimed after tasting the first bite. "Definitely better than my version," he joked, making everyone laugh. After dinner, Ethan's birth mother pulled out a small guitar. "Do you still remember the song we used to sing together?" "I never forgot, Mom," Ethan smiled. The two of them began singing softly, while Susan and Mark clapped along to the rhythm. Two families from different worlds now sat together, united through love and music. Outside the window, The city lights of San Diego sparkled, and Ethan reflected on how far his journey had taken him. He no longer hid who he was. His voice, his story, and his identity were now fully his, and that freedom filled him with peace. On the day of Ethan's high school graduation from Roosevelt, he performed one last special song. With Mark, Susan, and his birth mother sitting side by side in the front row, Ethan stood on stage and sang a self-composed piece that blended both English and the soft melody from his childhood lullaby. As the final note rang out, the entire auditorium stood in a roaring ovation. Tears of joy filled Ethan's eyes. The boy who once tried to hide his voice now shared it with the world. That night, as the family celebrated together, all three parents spoke with one voice. "You are Ethan, a young man with a unique voice, loved by three parents belonging to two worlds." And Ethan understood more than ever before that his song was only just beginning. Ethan's story wasn't simply one of success, it was a journey of identity, belonging, and finding the courage to embrace who he truly was. When he first entered Roosevelt Academy, he tried to disappear into the background. The weight of being a foster child, of feeling different, of fearing rejection, had made him shrink into himself. Principal Edwards's cruel attempt to humiliate him had, ironically, given him a stage where his true talent and story could finally be heard. Through his music, Ethan wasn't just singing, he was reaching for a part of himself that had been missing, the connection to his past, to his mother's lullabies, and to his roots. The support of Mr. Harris, the loyalty of Jessica and his classmates, and most of all, the unconditional love of Mark and Susan gave him the strength to turn his difference into something powerful. The Backlawn concert wasn't just an act of rebellion, it was a declaration, "My voice matters. I am here." And that message traveled across the country, even reaching San Diego, where it reunited him with his birth mother. Though their reunion was filled with complex emotions, it led to healing, forgiveness, and a new kind of family, one where both sides were part of his life. Ethan's identity was no longer confined to simple labels like adopted kid or foster child. He was fully himself, a young man belonging to two families, two cultures, and two worlds. And his voice became a harmony that blended all of these together. Roosevelt Academy itself changed as well. The resignation of Principal Edwards and the arrival of Dr. Chen symbolized more than just a change in leadership. It marked the beginning of a school culture that finally understood diversity as a gift, not a burden. We all have our own voices, and sometimes we hide them out of fear, shame, or uncertainty. But as Ethan's story shows us, true courage begins the moment we embrace our voice and share it with the world. Maybe you too have something you've been meaning to say to your parents, your friends, or someone you haven't spoken to in a long time. Take a moment today to share your story. You never know whose life it might touch. Thank you for watching. If Ethan's journey resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue sharing these inspiring stories. Until next time, stay strong and never be afraid to share your voice.